Let's take a look at using transitions. Now, transitions can be used in a number of ways. Here, for example, earlier I cut this clip with Scott steaming the milk into several pieces to make it faster. I got rid of a lot of the dead space where we just watched him steam and steam and steam. But now I've got these terrible jump cuts.
And then I'll show you how to put a nice broth on the top of it. Now comes the tricky.
Okay, so one thing I could do here, if I don't have a piece of B-roll that I can use to cover that, is I could put a transition between this clip and this clip. And there are video transitions as well as audio transitions. So not only can I hide the jump cut, but maybe I can cover that sound where we hear nothing in the first clip and very loud steaming in the second clip. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so we get a better view here. Okay, so the joint between these two clips is what I'll be working on at the moment. This starts by going to our effects library. So up here in the top left-hand corner, I'm going to click on Effects Library. If I'm not in the two-column view, I'm going to make sure that I enable that because I need to find my way under the toolbox to transitions. And again, you can see there's a category for video transitions and for audio transitions. Let's start with the video transitions. Now there's a whole bunch of dissolves here, and this might be a good place to start. Across dissolve, and you'll see the little red icon next to it, is the traditional dissolve. One image fades out as the other image fades in. There's also a lot of other things down here. I'll just scroll quickly so you can see. This is just a click and drag operation. I click on the icon for the transition I want, and I drag it to where I want it on the timeline. So we'll try just a dissolve here. I'm going to click and drag that, and I'm going to drop it right between these two clips. And you can see the little icon, the little thumbnail there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so we get a better view of it. Okay. So you can see this little icon that tells me I've put a dissolve there. Let's play it and see what that looks like.
In the picture, and then I'll show you how to put a nice broth on the top of it. Now comes.
I can't say that I really like that, so I could undo it, or just like anything else, if I single click on it, and I have to be careful about where I click in here, but if I single click, you'll see that it turns red and it's selected, so I can actually just delete it now. I'm going to try a dip to color dissolve. So this is going to fade the entire screen to a certain color and then fade back in. And I'm thinking that I'll fade to black in between the two, but let's try it and see. So again, I'm just going to drag this down here. And notice I can actually put it to the right, centered on the cut, or to the left of the cut. I'm going to center it on the cut. We'll talk more about that later.
Of it. Now.
Okay, by default it did a dip to white rather than a dip to black, but I think we have some promise here. I'm going to single click on this so that it's selected. And again, I have to be careful where I put the mouse so that I don't get some other feature going. And then to make the change, I'm going to open my inspector. So this top right-hand corner, I'm going to turn on the inspector. And here is the information about my transition. So right now it is set for 1 second, and I think that's fine. Scroll down just a little bit here, and I can see the color here. So I'm going to change the dip to color, and I'm going to change it from white to black. Okay, let's take a look at that.
Now comes.
That could totally work. Now, if I wanted to change the speed, I can change that by just changing this duration. Maybe I want it to be half a second, so let's cut that down to 15 frames and see if we like that better.
On the top of it. Now.
I don't think that helped. Let's try maybe a second and a half, so that would be 45 frames.
Broth on the top of it. Now comes the tricky.
That's not bad, and I might be happy with that. But let's see what else we could get away with. So I'm just going to select that and delete it. We'll put a pin in it, as they say. I'll come back to that if something else doesn't work. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit because I know when I get into the wipe category that there is a clock wipe. Now this is a little bit campy, but we're talking about time passing here, right? So let's give it a shot. So I'm just going to click and drag this down onto that junction between the two. And let's see what we get.
Now come.
Okay. Let me single click on that so that it's selected and take a look at what options I've got. Now, that wipe can have a border, and if I make the border a little bit bigger, we can see that in progress. And I can change the color of that border. So let's make that black. All right, let's see.
Now comes
Let's take a look at that again.
froth on the top of it. Now,
Yeah. Let me try going counterclockwise instead.
now,
You know, I can see what I'm trying to do there, but I'm really not just crazy about it. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to go back to what I had before. I'm going to work with the dip to black dissolve. I think that was just fine. So I'm going to get my dip to color dissolve, click and drag it onto here, single click to select it, change my dip color to black. And I think I slowed that down a little bit. We made that 45 frames.
froth on the top of it. Now comes the tricky part.
Okay, that is fine. I will live with that for the moment. I can do some work with the audio down here also by using transitions. So if I go to my audio transition, and you'll see by default that I don't have many choices here, but the default one is a crossfade at 0 dB. So I'm just going to drop that onto the audio track. And you'll see in this case, because there are two separate audio tracks, I have to do it. I have to do it twice. All right, so let's give that a listen.
Nice froth on the top of it. Now comes the
Okay, I heard something there that wasn't quite what I wanted, and I think what it is voice from earlier in this clip. So I'm going to take that, get rid of those effects. I'm going to reapply it, except I'm going to right justify it so that it fades into the second clip a little bit later.
on the top of it. Now comes the tricky part.
Okay, I think that works actually pretty smoothly.
Sure. And then I'll show you how to put a nice froth on the top of it. Now comes the tricky part.
Cool. Uh-oh, it looks like I accidentally deleted my dip to black there. So let me put that on there one more time. Apply, select, color black. Okay. And 1.5 seconds.
On the top of it. Now comes the tricky part.
Okay, I can totally live with that. So I could do that same thing on the next cut. Let me zoom out. I can use this in other places too. So between two clips is an obvious spot to have a transition. But I can also use them at the beginning or the end of a clip. So let's zoom in here at the beginning and take a look at my lower third. So his lower third just appears and disappears right now.
Hello, I'm Scott and welcome to my kitchen. Today we'll be talking about how to make the perfect cup of cappuccino.
And maybe that's not terrible, but I'd rather see it fade in and fade out. Now there are two ways I can do this. The way I'm used to doing it is I'm just going to take a cross dissolve and I'm going to apply it to the beginning and the end of his title clip. Right, so click and drag to the beginning, click and drag to the end. So what the dissolve will do is it will fade in from nothing, right? And it will fade out to nothing. I'm not sure why that came in so short, but I want to put them both back up to 1 second. All right, so let's see how this looks.
Hello, I'm Scott and welcome to my kitchen. Today we'll be talking about how to make the perfect cup of cappuccino.
Okay, that's just fine. Maybe I'll try a little bit fancier. So let me get rid of the dissolves. And let's look at some other options here. I think it might be fun to have this thing push in. So under the motion, so video transitions, motion, here's one for push. So I'm going to drop that on the beginning and drop that on the end.
Hello, I'm Scott and welcome to my kitchen.
Okay, I don't want it to go all the way across the screen like that. So I'm going to select this one, and I should be able to change over here in the inspector window. I want it to push from the right.
Hello, I'm Scott and welcome to my kitchen. Today we'll be talking about how to make the perfect cup of cappuccino.
Fantastic. That works for me. I like that. Another thing, since I'm in this area, is I want the beginning of this to fade in. Now I could do that again by dragging a cross dissolve to the beginning of this first clip. So let's try that. So this first clip is going to fade in. Maybe I'll speed that up just a little bit. Maybe I'll have it come in 15 frames rather than 30.
Hello, I'm Scott and welcome to my kitchen.
And that works perfectly fine. But let me show you something that is, as far as I can tell, unique to Resolve. You may not have paid attention to it, but whenever I point at a clip, this little white dot appears in the top corners, right? So if I point at my title clip here, you can see in the top left-hand corner and the top right-hand corner, the little icon, a little arrow has appeared. Let me do it over here. You can see it pretty clearly, or down here. That is actually a fade indicator, and it works on audio as well. So I can actually just grab that little dot, and you'll notice when I get my mouse right on top of it, the icon turns into a left and right stretchy arrow thing. I can pull that over. I'm going to kind of exaggerate it just so you can get a good view of it. And what this does is it ramps the opacity up. So this is another way to perform a fade.
Hello, I'm Scott and welcome to my kitchen.
And I could use that. Let me zoom down here to find my B-roll, for example. Or if I wanted to have these identifications fade in and out and my B-roll fade in and out, I could do that by dragging a dissolve down to it. I like dragging a dissolve down to it because I can do the time management, right? If I want to fade in this clip and I want that fade to only last 3 frames, I can do that very easily, right? So it's going to...
A light roast.
Try that again.
A light roast.
So it fades in very quickly. Let me undo that and undo. But I could try to do the same thing by clicking and dragging that little icon. And it tells me how long the fade is going to run, but it's just not quite as precise. Something like this, 10 frames. Now we'll watch our B-roll fade in.
Have a light roast.
All right, so let me undo that. I just wanted to point out that there's more than one way to do a fade. Now, any other transition you have to do by clicking and dragging a transition. So I prefer to work with the cross dissolve just because it's consistent, the workflow of clicking and dragging. But just to show you, Resolve does have another way to do this. And let's jump to the very end of our program. The only other thing I might want to do is put a fade out at the end so that his smiling face, slowly fades away rather than just cutting off. My preferred workflow, again, is I'm going to drop a cross dissolve down here on the end of it. And as the credit roll is ending, he'll be fading out. That's kind of sweet, right? But I could have, let me delete that. I could have accomplished the same thing by grabbing that little fade icon and dragging it 1 second to the left, assuming my shaky fingers can stop on 1 second. I like using the dissolve because it's very comfortable to me. It reminds me of other editing platforms I've used, but they both have the same effect. So do what you would like in that case. All right. I think that's enough about transitions for now. We'll go and look in a later video about what happens when transitions don't work and why that is.